This is a continuation of the worksheet, the graph y equals sine x. We looked at the shape of the graph. We looked at the maximum value of the graph was 1. The minimum value of the graph was -1. We looked at what values of theta that occurred for. And then we looked at how, for example, with the red values there, that they're all very similar, but sometimes it's, for example, where the red is positive 0.87, positive 0.87 in quadrants 1 and 2, but negative 0.87, negative 0.87 quadrants 3 and 4 for some certain values. Same thing with the blue one. Sine 30 was a half, sine of 150 was a half, but sine 240 was negative a half, and sine 330 was also negative a half. And we looked at that down the bottom of the sheet, and we're trying to sort of see the pattern, okay? So we looked at that, and we actually saw that, you know, sine 30 and 150 are a half, for example, but sine 210 and 330 were also a half. But we looked at the different quadrants, 1, 2, 3, and 4, and we're actually going to turn over here to the back page, right? And we're going to look a bit more closely at the quadrants. So we've got the sine graphs there, and so, for example, in quadrant 1, sine of 10, so quadrant 1, remember, was from 0 to 90 degrees. Sine 0 was 0, sine 90 was 1, and we saw that sine of 10 all the way up to sine of 80 were all positive values, okay? These we worked out on our calculator. You did not have to know how to do those, but we saw that in quadrant 1, which is from 0 to 90 degrees, quad 1, up to 90 degrees, that sine was always positive. Then we looked at quadrant 2 from 90 to 180 degrees, quadrant 2, and we can also see here for quadrant 2 from 90 to 180 that sine's always positive. Now, quadrant 2 is from 90 to 180. So, for example, if we look at this next bit here, quadrant 2, sine of 100. See, quadrant 2 is between 90 and 180. 100, if we try and put it in this format, that the 100 is 180 minus something, what's that something? 180 minus what is 100? So, if you look at your table, look at sine 100, it's 0.98. It equals sine 80, which is 0.98. Sine 110. 180 minus what is 110? Okay, look at your table. Sine 70 is 0.94. That equals sine 110, which is also 0.94. Can you see what I'm doing? So I want that 130, for example. That 130 you've got to say is 180 minus what? 50. So sine 130 is the same as sine 50. Do you get what I'm doing? Look at your table. Sine 50 is 0.77, so sine 130. The next one, 140 is what? 180 minus 40. So sine 140 equals sine 40. Sine 150, 150 is 180 minus 30. So let's look at our 150. Sine 150 is a half. That equals sine 30, which is also a half. Now, I'm going to draw these angles a bit for you as well. Sine 160. See, quadrant 2, remember quadrant 2 is when your angle is from 90 to 180. That's quadrant 2. And whenever the angle is from 90 to 180, the format for quadrant 2 is 180 minus something is what your angle is. So what's this one? 180 minus? So 160 is 180 minus 20. So sine of 160 equals sine 20. All right? Now, I'm going to put this together a bit better soon. We're just going to look at our table of values, and then I'm going to do it diagrammatically for you. First, I'm just teaching you the rule. But then, so actually for year 10, we really need to just stop here. But can you see that from those tables? That sine 160, for example, which is 0.34, is the same as sine 20. That's all we're doing. Okay? Now, but we're trying to show you that there's a pattern. If you look at sine 180, and it's on the worksheet, sine 180 is negative 0.17. One sec. Sine 190 is what? Negative 0.17. Isn't that the same as negative sine 10? Sine 10 is 0.17, so sine 190 is negative sine 10. Now, the reason we do this, quadrant 3 is from 180 through to 270 degrees. That's quadrant 3. Now, if an angle lies between 180 and 270, you have to say that the angle is in this format. It's 180 plus something. So 180 plus what gives 190? Notice that 190 is 180 plus 10. Do you get it? So 180 plus 10, that's why it's sine 10. But if you've got the sine of 180 plus something, it equals negative sine of that small angle there. That's what the rule is telling you. So sine of 190 is 180 plus 10. So you write sine 10, but it's negative. If you look at the graph, the sine graph, this is telling me, well, it's the same as sine 10 with a negative in front of it. What have we got up here? Sine of 10 is 0.17. Put a negative in front of that, it's negative 0.17. So sine of 190 is negative 0.17. Isn't that the same as negative sine 10? All right. So quadrant 3, look at 200. That's 180 plus what? 20. So it's negative sine 20 because in quadrant 3, all your sine values are negative. Sine of 220. 220 is 180 plus 40. So it's negative sine 40. The next one, sine 230. 230 is 180 plus what? 50. So it's negative sine 50. So what we're basically learning, girls, I'll give you the rule in a minute. 240 is 180 plus 60, so it's negative sine 60. Look at your table of values. Sine of 240 is negative 0.87. That is the same as negative whatever sine 60 was. See? Sine of 240 is negative 0.87. It's the same as negative of sine 60, which is negative then the 0.87. All right, and the last one, 260, is 180 plus what? Plus 80. So therefore, sine of 260, if you look in your table, isn't it the same as negative sine 80? Can you see that in the table? Now, just give me a minute. Give me a minute. I just want you observing at the moment, girls, just observing. Now, that's quadrant 3. Quadrant 4 in the circle goes from 270 degrees through to 360 degrees. So if an angle lies between 270 and 360, its general form is 360 minus something. And sine is also negative in that quadrant. The reason sine's negative in the quadrant, you can see it from the graph. I'll put the graph back up. Look. Quadrant 1, 0 to 90, we got positive values. Quadrant 2, 90 to 180, we got positive values. But quadrant 3, 180 to 270, you got negative values down here. Same here, negative values also for quadrant 4. Because that's how the curve goes. Can you see? The curve is above the lines for quadrants 1 and 2, anything up to 180, but below the line for anything bigger than 180 to 360. So this is what we say, that sine is positive in quadrants 1 and 2, but negative in quadrants 3 and 4. Okay? So, all right, quadrant 4 is from 270 to 360. But the way that you talk about the angle, you don't say that 280 is 270 plus 10. You have to say that 280 is 360 minus what? 360 minus what is 280? Well, what's 360 minus 280? 80. So 360 minus 80 is 280. So it's the same as negative sine 80. Look, sine of 280 is negative 0.98. Sine of 80 is positive 0.98. So sine of 280 is negative of the 0.98. 290 is 360 minus what? Or just do 360 minus 290. What's that? 70. So if you look at your sheet, sine of 290 will be negative sine 70. Sine of 300. 300 is 360 minus what? 60. So that's negative sine 60. Sine of 320, isn't 320 360 minus 40? So it's negative sine 40. So if you look up sine 320, it's negative point what? 0.64. Sine of 40 is 0.64. Therefore, sine of 320 is negative, whatever sine 40 is. What about the next one? 330 is 360 minus 30, which is? So it's negative sine 30 if you look at your sheet. And 350 happens to be 360 minus 10. So sine of 350, if you look at it, negative 0.17, is the same as negative sine of 10. So, remembering our number plane, this is quadrant 1 over here. So our 0 degrees is here. This is 90 degrees, 180, 270, and back to 360 around the circle. So if I want to do sine 30, for example, 30 degrees is here, and that is the 30 degrees in there. So we know from our exact values, so for quadrant 1, we just call the angle whatever it is. Sine 30 is just sine 30, okay? Now we know that sine 30, for example, is a half. So I'm just going to put that underneath. I'll just get rid of this. I need some more room. Yep, but I'm doing it again. There's quadrant 1 in here. This top right-hand corner, the reason it's quadrant 1 is because both the x's and the y's are positive there. So, for example, if I ask you to do sine 30, the answer is it's an exact value 1. It's just positive a half. So that says that sine 30 equals a half. Quadrant 2, I might ask you to work out sine of 150. Now, so quadrant 2 sine 150, I start from here and I go 150 degrees. Now, if I go 150 degrees here, what's left over? 30. So girls, whenever you're trying to work out an angle bigger than 90, I'm not interested in, so our angles start from here and you've got to go anti-clockwise. So that's sine 30 up to there. Sine 150 means I'm in the second quadrant, 0, 90, 180. 150 there, I'm not interested in that. I'm interested in what bit is touching the x-axis here, and it's 30. Now I know that sine is positive in quadrant 2, so I'm not interested in the 150. Tell me what this little angle in here is. So that you'll find sine 150 equals sine 30. Now because sine is positive in quadrants 1 and 2, sine 30 is just a half. Sine 150 will equal whatever sine 30 is because it makes a 30-degree angle in quadrant 2 with this horizontal axis. Remember, quadrant 2 is 180 minus theta. Actually, I don't want to put it there. All right, just come up. Just watch what I'm going to do here. Wait. Quadrant 1, just watching, is theta. Quadrant 2, you might even draw another diagram, is always 180 minus theta. Now, where is the theta? It's in there. Quadrant 3 is always 180 plus theta. That's how we write it. And quadrant 4, and the thetas are in there. Quadrant 4 is always 360 minus theta. So, if I want to go to quadrant 1, I go to there. If I want to go to quadrant 2, I go to there. But I'm interested really what this small angle is. If I'm in quadrant 3, I've come around here. I'm not worried about all of that. I'm worried about that little bit there. And if I want to know about, if I'm in quadrant 4, which is around here, I'm not interested in all around here. I'm interested in that little angle there. Remember I said the butterfly? Once you get into a quadrant, I'm only interested in the angles touching this x-axis. That's all I'm interested in. I'm not interested in the others. So it goes like this. This is how you learn it. You say quadrant 1 is just the angle. Quadrant 2 is always 180 minus, to get to it, it's 180 minus that angle. I need to know what that bit in the middle is. Quadrant 3, see 180 is a straight line plus that bit. To get to that line there, it's 180 plus that bit. And to get to this last line here in quadrant 4, it would be 360 but minus that bit, minus that theta. That's why quadrant 4 is 360 minus theta. So if we were looking at sine 240, we say, right, 240, that's 90, 180, 240 would be another 60 degrees along there. So sine of 240, so 240 is all the way around. Sine of 240 is the same as the sine of this little acute angle here, sine 60, but because it's quadrant 3, it's negative sine 60. Do we get that? Let's say I asked you to work out sine of 310. So I say, how do I get to 310? 90, 180, 270, and a bit more. Well, it is short from 360 by 50 degrees. So sine of 310 is going to be the same as either positive or negative sine of 50. Because sine is negative in quadrant 4, it's negative sine 50. Okay? Please put the negative for sine 240 is the same as negative sine 60. Okay, so here the 310's all the way around there, but I'm not interested in the 310. I want to know when you're in this quadrant what that little bit there is. Here, I know we got the 240, but that's 180 plus that extra little bit, and it's that extra little bit that I'm worried about. Okay. They're the same as